discuss his experience and expertise in Synergy, CoDiagnostix, and CARES Visual. Nikolai, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Artemis.
Thank you so much for joining me. Yes, of course.
Good morning, dear colleagues.
I wanted to share a little bit about Nikolai's background. So he is an ITI fellow. He has his DDS from Moscow University and University of Siena. He's got his master's from Moscow University and University of Rome, Sapienza. And he's an ITI scholar from University of Geneva and is currently doing his PhD in implant prosthetic department at University of Rome, Sapienza. Thank you. And he joins us today to share his experience and techniques in guided surgery with immediate restoration performed prior to surgery via Synergy, and he'll show us the great possibilities this offers. Thank you, Nikolai. So let's start with, if you don't mind, give a little bit of background about yourself, your practice, and what digital tools and platforms you use.
So I'm doing both prosthetics and surgery, and I focus myself in the digital implant dentistry. I'm using different softwares, but for surgical planning I use CoDiagnostix, and for Synergy, of course, I should combine it with CARES Visual, which is a dental technician software, but you can, it's an open software, you can match it even with others.
Yes, very good. And what about your experience with Synergy? I want to know, is it possible to use Synergy for partially or even fully edentulous treatment cases?
Yeah, there are several indications for Synergy. You can use them in immediate cases. You can practically make the patient leave your office with the same teeth he has before. You can just copy the anatomy and place the implants accordingly. As for edentulous, it might be one of the indications for Synergy, because edentulous cases and cases in the aesthetic zones are those where we should perform immediate loading.
Yes.
So why not to do it before? To do it maybe better, it's less time consuming. So there are lots of advantages.
Very good. What about from your perspective, speaking of advantages, what do you think is the patient advantage? What do they experience in terms of using these digital solutions to do partial or full edentulous treatments? What do you think is the advantage to the patient?
The advantage of the patient is that he gets the restoration immediately. He doesn't have to wait. But for edentulous, of course, it might be more difficult. You should, in some cases, have to rebase, etc. And it's a very complex procedure. You should be very precise in the experience. Also in terms of creating the surgical guides, their fit and everything. And as for edentulous, there is a library, but for Synergy you can use only implant-borne components.
Right.
For multi-unit abutments, it is now, as far as I knew in the exhibition, it's going to launch with the Smile in a Box system. Yes. So it's also going to be feasible.
Very nice. Now you mentioned to me about the triple scan technique. Yeah. Would you mind sharing with our audience about the technique in case they're not familiar? And also, is it more time consuming? Is it than traditional intraoral scans? Can you share with them a little bit about the technique and advantages?
If we compare it to the analog technique, if we imagine a case where the patient has a provisional crown and we do not individualize the transfer, we fail to transfer to the technician all the information about the soft tissue profile that we created. The same happens with the intraoral scan. When you have to unscrew the temporary crown to screw in the scan body to perform the intraoral scan this time. And during this time, the gingiva collapses, you know, it collapses very fast.
Right.
So with just 2 more scans, which are the scan of the temporary crown on site and the temporary crown alone, you can provide the technician with all the necessary information so he can match the 3 scans and he can follow the anatomy of the provisional to create the final restoration of the abutment.
Very nice.
And if you compare it to the traditional technique, the analog technique, it's even less time consuming.
Yes. Now you, speaking of different types of indications, you've prepared for the audience a single crown treatment via Synergy, and it's in the aesthetic zone. If you don't mind, would you please give us your presentation?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So you kindly introduced me, that I come from Moscow and my experience. Oh, doesn't go any further. Can you please place the next one?
Technology.
Yeah.
Ah!
Okay.
We made it.
So, I would like to share with you my experience on synergy of CoDiagnostix and Keras Visual. Synergy is a tool that combines both of them. CoDiagnostix, you know, it's surgery for guided implant planning and creation of surgical guides. And Keras Visual is a software for dental technician.
Yes.
And Synergy combines them both. So what can we do? We can make a crown for immediate loading, even before surgery, but only when we're using fully guided protocol. What is fully guided protocol for me? Can you please put the next slide? You know...
Does it?
No, it doesn't work.
Ah, next slide. There's people there that can help.
So, you know, there are different softwares, different surgical kits, but they will not give you the fully guided protocol. So for me, fully guided protocol is the combination of CoDiagnostix and Straumann guided surgery kit. With them, I can get this perfect result. So I'd like to share with you this case. It's a case of the anesthetic zone. The patient addressed our clinic. He wanted to restore the lateral incisor.
Yes.
So first, what we do, we take a CT scan and we import it in the software in CoDiagnostix. Here is how looks the software. We should import it in DICOM format. And we go for planning. There is a huge library of different implants, but in this case, we are choosing bone level implant, rock solid, selective, everything, 3.3 as this is an aesthetic zone, narrow spaces. And we are taking either a normal impression and scan it, otherwise we can take an intraoral impression. Important that we get the STL file.
Next.
Yeah, next please.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
Sorry.
Important that we get the STL file of the current situation.
Right.
We need it because we know that CT scan is not precise and
Exactly.
we need precise support for the surgical guide. And we match it with the CT. Then we can also match this model with a digital workshop to have some prosthetically driven implant planning.
Very nice.
And then we go for creation of surgical guide. There are two versions of this software, the clinician one and the technician one. The difference is that in the technician one you can actually create the surgical guide. So, like I'm a dentist, but I'm doing the whole procedure. Important, of course, to have this inspection windows. And then there is also a library of prosthetic components.
Right.
There are both analog components and components for digital. In our case, of course, we choose digital components. This is Vario base, Straumann T base, and then we go for connecting to our dental technician via Synergy.
Synergy, right.
So he can create us a temporary crown. We can do it by sending him STL files. So the matching is done by these STL files. We also send him antagonists, the bite, everything that he can create interproximal contacts, occlusion, check everything. And this is done live, so any changes that he's making, I can see live. I can see him working on the crown, and he can see my implant if I change its position, everything. Like in my case, I was doing this patient in Moscow, and my dental technician is in Italy, so we can do it even from different countries.
Yes.
It's the digital
Wonderful,
world
yes.
today.
The digital world is a good place.
This is how it looks in the dental technician software. It's Keras Visual, which goes today together with IO scanner.
Yes.
And you see that the technician can see my implant and the Vario base. So at the end, what we have before the surgical procedure, we have three elements. We have the surgical guide, the T-base, vario base, and temporary crown, which has the inner surface, which corresponds to vario base, and we can glue them directly before surgery. And this is the case, the initial situation. So all this case was done with my colleague and friend Alexei Rabov and with dental technician Claudio Ramo. I should give credit to them.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
you can see this case with severe bone atrophy and soft tissue atrophy, both horizontally and vertically.
Yes.
Also,
Not an easy case.
some plaque accumulation.
Yep.
And this patient, he had the lateral incisor removed about 3 months before, so at another dentist, and then he came to me, and this is a type 3 implant placement according to Chen and Boozer classification.
Yes.
So we require definitely some GBR and soft tissue management procedures. We started with some debridement. You could see some plaque, so it's polishing, grinding, and we used also prep gel to get better soft tissue attachment at the end.
Very nice.
Then we were going for trying in of the surgical guide. You can see that it has these inspection windows. We can check that it was sitting very precisely, and this was very difficult in terms of planning because you can see the very narrow interproximal spaces, and this was crucial to place the sleeve because it has some sort of horizontal parts that we managed to place it accordingly to the neighboring teeth. Otherwise, the full guided protocol would not be possible.
Exactly.
And you can see also these rotation markers. They are the clue of the technique. You can engrave them in the software. They are just marked red for better visibility. And this is very important because the implant has so-called crossfit connection. So we should know at which point to stop at the moment of the insertion of the implant. Otherwise, our crown will not fit.
Right.
So we open the flap, and here we can see this bone defect. And it was okay for implant placement because if we plan it correctly, in terms of depth, apically coronally, to have a good emergency profile and everything, we'll have enough bone both interproximally and palatally. So only a little bit of defect vestibularly. Then we performing all the Straumann guided surgery protocol. We are using the pilot drill, the 2.8 drill, the bone profiler, everything. And then we're placing the implant. There are two possibilities. Either we're placing the guided implant, otherwise we can place a normal implant, any implant, even tissue level, everything.
Right.
Important that it has the new Loxim, relatively new adapter, and we can put on the so-called guided adapter. You can see that it has these markers. They are horizontal and vertical. The horizontal should correspond with the sleeve, and the vertical, they are corresponding with these lines that we designed, so we have the proper position. And then we try in the restoration, and I must say that it was perfect because I didn't use the handpiece at all.
Nice.
It was perfect in terms of
God,
even.
that's nice.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yes, I was lucky.
Excellent.
No, it's important for all the procedure, also the milling, everything, that it gets perfect. And even interproximal and occlusion, it was okay. Then we unscrew it, and we have to perform this regeneration procedures. First, we've done the bone regeneration procedure, and we've done it with autologous bone that we harvested in the same sites with Buddha scraper. Then we've collected some soft tissue graft, connective tissue graft from the palate, and it was fixed with a gingiva former from one side and with sutures to the periosteum for the others.
Okay.
And it was playing also the role of membrane, and we were hoping that it will give us some growth of soft tissue, both vestibulary and occlusally. So we hope for some papilla. You see, this is the situation before surgery and immediately after surgery. There were no papilla, and we left some spaces with the crown for them to grow in some time. And then we waited for 3 months for the implant to osseointegrate.
Right.
And we started with the, can you go back? And we started with the final rehabilitation, with the final crown. Can you go back, 2 slides back? Another one back. Yeah, thank you. So this is the triple scan technique. We were using the trios to shape intraoral scanner.
Right.
And we performed 3 scans. The first with the crown on site, the other with the crown alone, and the main scan with the scan body.
Yeah.
So again, we managed to provide the technician with all the data. He matches all the 3 scans, and he can follow the anatomy of the provisional. Otherwise, it is not feasible.
Right.
And he was doing this time is in ExoCAD, so it's possible to use different softwares. Everything is opened. There is also another feature in CoDiagnostix. It's called the treatment evaluation tool. It helps you to check whether your result was the same as you planned.
Right.
It's open to the universities, etc. So it's mostly for research. And how does it work? You can match the preoperative planning with the postoperative CT scan. Otherwise, like in this case, you can match your preoperative planning with the intraoral scan. You can see the scan body.
Yep.
And you can check whether your result was the same or not, if there is some deviation. All the studies are done with of guided surgery. They are done today with this evaluation tool. It's very interesting. Then the technician creates this CARES zirconium abutment. We've chosen it for better aesthetics, and it could better repeat the soft tissue contours of the restoration that we created. He's printing the models. The models can be exported only from CARES Visual.
Okay.
So to have the digital implant analog fit perfectly, otherwise it's not feasible again. And this is the final result. We made a lithium disilicate crown on this abutment. You see, we've even managed to print the gingiva.
Yes.
At the model, and you can see a better result in this complex case of soft tissue. It was very difficult, but at least we have some improvement.
I completely agree.
I can say and conclude that Synergy is a tool which helps you in treatment planning in very difficult cases, because if you compare it even to digital workup, it's not the same. Digital workup, you can use it to follow some anatomy, to place the implant accordingly, but it's not the same as Synergy, because Synergy lets you create a real prosthetic restoration. So you can you control everything, some soft tissue profiles, the axis, and what is important, the angles that will make your final restoration fit.
Yeah.
And of course, it helps us to work digital, which is very interesting nowadays. It's interesting technologies for me, and to get these interesting results.
Very good. I have one more question for you. Thank you for sharing your case, and I agree that's not an easy case for gingiva and papilla management.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. So I have one more question for you. Why have you selected Straumann as your partner of choice?
This is a very good question because, of course, first I got to know about Straumann from the ITI, and these are two winning collaborations. Like I started with as an ITI scholar in the university in Geneva, then I became a study club director in Moscow, then an ITI fellow, everything, and it gives you a lot of possibilities for education, both ITI and Straumann, like never company else.
Yep.
ITI gives you great scientific background, top speakers in the world, and you can see at every event that Straumann is present, not only IDS, you present something new, no? Like a lot of new cases. You can grow with Straumann, and that is interesting for my professional career to grow.
Yes.
This is the most important.
I was sharing with another guest yesterday that I